Անգամ կրկնում եմ, ովքեր չեն վերցրել այս սարքերը թարգմանչական, խնդրում եմ հիմա վերցնեն, որպեսզի ընթացքում աժիոտաժ չառաջանա։ Պարոն դեսպան, շնորհակալ ենք մեր հրավերը ընդունելու եւ ներկա գտնվելու համար մեդիա կենտրոնում եւ առաջին անգամ այստեղ մեդիա կենտրոնում ներկայացնելու ուրեմն ռազմավարությունը, որը նոր է այսպես մշակվել։ Ես կխնդրեմ դուք այսպես սկզբից ներկայացնեք ռազմավարությունը, ինչի մասին է խոսքը, ինչ է այն ուրեմն Եվրոպական միության համար եւ ինչ է այն նշանակում Եվրոպական միության հետ համագործակցող երկրների համար, զորօրինակ Հայաստանի, որը եւս համագործակցում է եւ բանակցություններ է վարում նոր շրջանակային փաստաթղթի ձևավորման շուրջ, այնուհետեւ մենք արդեն կանցնենք հարցերին եւ պատասխաններին, պարոն դեսպան։ Խնդրեմ։
Բարև ձեզ, dear journalists, I wanted in the first place to thank the Media Center for hosting this conference. We are very appreciative of the hospitality of the Media Center. I thank you for accepting the invitation and for coming here in such a big number. It is always for me a pleasure to meet with you, the representatives of the journalist community of Armenia, and as you know, I always try to be as open as possible. I hope I will not let you down also this time. The topic of our meeting, the conference today, is the presentation of the new global strategy of the European Union. As you know from the news agencies, the new global strategy of the European Union was presented by the High Representative, the Vice President of the European Commission, Federica Mogherini, last week. It is a very significant document. It is a document which outlines the vision of the world that the European Union is cherishing and the lines of action that the European Union as a global actor is planning to undertake. Why the new strategy? The answer is very simple, because the world has changed significantly. There are some very important challenges, in particular security threats in the immediate neighborhood of the European Union, which are affecting the lives of Europeans, which are influencing the way Europe thinks about the world and the problems that are affecting the world. The strategy speaks about these new threats and new risks and new challenges, but it also speaks about new opportunities. These opportunities are helping many people in the world to come out from poverty. These new opportunities enable states and individuals to look for new objectives, to undertake new lines of actions to deal with threats, problems, challenges. The European Union, through this strategy, wants to send a very simple message. Europe wants to be stronger. Europe wants to be seen as a more active player, security provider in world affairs. So this strategy is about the aspiration of the European Union to be stronger. This stronger role of the European Union is something that the citizens of Europe deserve. The citizens of Europe want the European Union to bring the added value to the role of national governments, national states. And it is something that the world expects from the European Union. The world wants the European Union to contribute more and to contribute better to the governance of the world affairs. I think in many countries of the world, this expectation that the European Union should contribute more is visible, and I think also in South Caucasus, also in Armenia. The European Union already now has many assets which make it a very important global player. What are the assets? The European Union is number one partner in trade for most of the states on the global scene. Already now, the European Union for many states, including Armenia, is the number one investor. And the European Union is by far the biggest contributor to development in the world. The contribution of the European Union to development assistance is bigger than the contribution of all the other states combined. The European Union provides more than 50% of development assistance. So the assets is there. The problem is how to use these assets, how to make the European Union a more visible, more effective, and more constructive security provider and global player. The global strategy speaks about 5 priorities. What are these priorities? First is the security of the European Union, and that's obvious. We start from ourselves. The most important task is to provide the citizens of Europe with the feeling of security, the feeling that the world is governed in a way which gives them this feeling of security and prosperity. The second priority is state and societal resilience in the eastern and southern neighborhood. The third priority is integrated approach to conflicts and crises. The fourth is cooperative regional orders. And the fifth is better global governance for the 21st century. Very briefly about some of these priorities, which I believe are of particular relevance for this region and for Armenia. Let me start with the security, the first priority, security of the European Union. The European Union for many years has been regarded as a civilian power, an entity making use of its soft power potential. Now this strategy speaks about soft power and hard power going hand in hand together. The European Union wants to make stronger the provisions in the Lisbon Treaty referring to mutual assistance and solidarity. The European Union is not an alliance. The European Union is not a collective security organization, but it has clauses in its treaties referring to mutual assistance and solidarity. And now this strategy calls for making these clauses stronger. Most importantly, this strategy speaks about the need to increase the image of the European Union as a security community. The European Union wants to develop strategic autonomy and strategic convergence among member states through more harmonized defense planning cycles. The particular areas of concern are obvious. That's terrorism, hybrid threats, economic volatility, cyber terrorism, cyber threats, strategic communications. Another important priority is this state and societal resilience to the east and the south. Resilience is the key word, defining the policy of the European Union in the neighborhood, including in this region. This strategy speaks about the role of the neighborhood policy. It speaks about the intention to deepen the partnerships extended to countries in the neighborhood, including countries in the eastern neighborhood. The main emphasis is, of course, on countries which adopted the association path, the countries which concluded deep and comprehensive treaty agreements. Some new ideas for deepening these cooperative partnerships are mentioned. They are like the creation of an economic area with countries implementing deep and comprehensive free trade agreements, the extension of trans-European networks, and the energy community, as well as building physical and digital connections. So, this global strategy means a more active involvement of the European Union in the neighboring regions. Globally, this strategy develops an idea of the European Union leading by example. The European Union being agenda shaper, connector, coordinator, facilitator. The European Union speaks in favor of reforming the global institutions, including the United Nations and international financial institutions. This strategy makes it clear that the European Union is for change in global governance. The European Union doesn't want to be seen as an element of conservatism. So, this is the strategy. I invite you to have a look at it. It's probably too long to have an in-depth analysis. Nevertheless, I wanted once again to highlight the signal coming from Brussels. In this very difficult period, in these very challenging times, the European Union wants to be stronger. The European Union wants to be seen as a more meaningful global actor, which I think opens also new perspectives for our mutual cooperation between the European Union and Armenia. Thank you so much. Now I am at your disposal.
Շնորհակալություն պարոն դեսպան, շնորհակալություն ներկայացնելու համար global strategian. Այժմ ես երկու հարց ունեմ, որից հետո ես հաճույքով խոսքը հարցերի իրավունքը կտրամադրեմ մեր լրագրողներին։ Պարոն դեսպան, այստեղ նշվեց, որ կոնֆլիկտների եւ հակամարտությունների վերաբերյալ դուք նշեցիք ուղղություններից մեկը, այն է համապարփակ, ուրեմն մոտեցման ձևավորումն է։ Եթե պրոյեկտենք սա Ղարաբաղի վերաբերյալ, ինչ է նշանակում սա Ղարաբաղի մասով, Ղարաբաղյան հակամարտության մասով, արդյոք որոշակի փոփոխություններ են լինելու Եվրոպական միության մոտեցումների մեջ Լեռնային Ղարաբաղի հակամարտության համատեքստում։ Խնդրեմ։
I think it's clear for all of us that the recent months have brought new dynamic into the process of the settlement of the conflict in and around Nagorno-Karabakh. The Vienna summit opened, in a way, a new chapter in the efforts to find a fair and comprehensive solution to the problem. Quite recently, we have witnessed a new important summit in St. Petersburg, and this process continues. The European Union is fully supporting the efforts undertaken within this framework. The leading role is played by the co-chairs of the Minsk Group, and the European Union is fully behind these efforts. Quite soon, even I could say tomorrow, the European Union Special Representative for South Caucasus will be coming to Yerevan. He will have meetings with the President of Armenia, the Foreign Minister, with other officials. And his visit is another testimony that the European Union wants to be seen as a contributing partner. The European Union wants to be supportive of these peace efforts. They are now in a very delicate stage. Probably it is not prudent to speak too much about these efforts, because this period requires a lot of quiet diplomacy, requires a lot of very confidential approaches. So I would presume that it's not time for strong public diplomacy. Nevertheless, as far as the European Union is concerned, we continue our support to the efforts aimed at bringing a solution to the process. And I think that the agreements reached in the understandings reached at the Vienna summit should be implemented, because they now constitute the way to bring a change, a good change, a positive change into the conflict resolution dynamics. But on a general note, indeed, this component of integrated approach to conflicts is very strong in the new strategy. What it says is that the European Union wants to invest even more in the full spectrum of conflict prevention and crisis settlement, from early warning, early action, preemptive peace, as it is said in the strategy, also through the implementation of peace settlement. And I think that's also something that the European Union can bring to the region. I think that the European Union will stand ready to contribute to the implementation of any peace settlement, durable peace settlement, which may emerge from the current negotiations.
Շնորհակալություն, պարոն դեսպան, եւ իմ երկրորդ հարցը վերաբերում է թերևս աղմուկ բարձրացած եւ համաշխարհային մամուլով շատ քննարկվող Brexit-ին, Բրիտանիայի քվեարկությանը, հայտնի, որով Բրիտանիայի ուրեմն քվեարկողները հանրակրվեին մասնակցած մոտ շուրջ 50% քվեարկածները կողմ արտահայտվեցին Եվրամիությունից դուրս գալու, բայց մյուս կողմից մենք տեսնում ենք այս ռազմավարությունը, որով Եվրոպան հայտ է ներկայացնում, Եվրամիությունը հայտ է ներկայացնում ավելի ուժեղ լինել, ավելի կարծր լինել եւ ավելի ներգրաված լինել տարբեր ուրեմն անվտանգության, ինչպես նաեւ գլոբալ աշխարհի գործերում։ Այս ամենի ներքին բալանսը ինչպես է գտնելու Եվրոպան, այսինքն մի կողմից Բրիտանիայի նման հզոր պետությունը, որ դուրս է գալիս, սա ինչ որ առումով խնդիր է, մյուս կողմից այդ հայտը լինել ավելի ուժեղ եւ ավելի ակտիվ։
As you all know, the process of reflection is now underway. This reflection takes place in the United Kingdom itself, in the European capitals, as well as in the seat of the European institutions. You are aware of the European Council deliberations last week, where the implications of the referendum in Britain was put prominently on the agenda. You know about the statements made by different leaders of the European countries, and you know about the statements made by the high officials of the European Union. There was a statement issued by the President of the European Council, President of the European Commission, President of the European Parliament, and the Dutch presidency of the Council. There were other statements made by the European Union, including by my immediate boss, the High Representative, Vice President. So you know the general political context and the general direction in which the thinking in Europe is going about it. What I wanted to say from my perspective as an ambassador representing the European Union in Armenia, this vote has not changed anything about our commitment in Armenia, our commitment to the region. There are no implications for our policies. There are no implications for our bilateral dialogue on the framework agreement, on other important issues which are coming up, like the partnership priorities or discussions on the next single support framework, which will define the projects, the programs which would make our cooperative assistance more meaningful here in Armenia. So, to Armenians, I wanted to say that what happened in Britain is, of course, something very serious, and Europe will be dealing with that in a most serious way. But for our bilateral agenda, for our actions, our activities, there are no direct and even indirect implications. Of course, you may ask, how come talking now about stronger Europe with the results of the British vote? But still, if you take the assets that the European Union has, its role in trade, its role in foreign investment, its role in development assistance, with or without Britain, the leadership role is there. With Britain it would be much, much bigger, definitely, but it is still very big.
Շնորհակալ եմ, խնդրեմ ձեր հարցը, բայց ես խնդրում եմ միկրոֆոնը ձեզ փոխանցեմ, որպեսզի թարգմանչի համար էլ հեշտ լինի։ Հետո ձեզ։ Հետո դուք իհարկե ասեմ։ Այս կողմ խնդրում եմ լրագրողների միջոցով փոխանցեք։ Ներկայացեք եւ ուղղեք ձեր հարցը։
Nane Sahakyan, Radio Liberty. Mr. Svitalsky, the destiny of the changed electoral code of Armenia is still unknown. What part of the funding needed is the European Union ready and wants to provide for the changes? And what are your feelings? What do you think? Does the Armenian government really want these changes to happen? As the opposition says that the money that the government wants to invest, only 3 million, is not showing their really big desire for the changes. Thank you.
Thank you. You all remember what I said many months ago at our meetings and at other public speeches. I believe the next national elections are crucial for the future of this country. And therefore, we supported very much the effort to prepare the next elections based on an inclusive process. And I'm very glad to note that this agreement between the government and the opposition parties on the technological aspect of the next elections reflects the idea of an inclusive process. I was probably one of the first to congratulate both the government representatives and the opposition representatives for reaching the deal. The agreement, of course, doesn't solve all possible issues, and we know that very serious and deep disagreements exist between the governing coalition and the opposition parties and civil society concerning the electoral code and the next elections. That's quite obvious. Still, I wanted to say that the agreement reached between the government and the opposition has been regarded widely outside Armenia as a historic deal. It was an example of overcoming very deep and very sharp political differences for the sake of something bigger, the future of the country, fair elections. So the effort has been very commendable. I understand now the National Assembly passed the necessary laws. Still, the implementation of the deal is provisional. I hope that the financial side of the issue is solved in a constructive way. What I wanted to say is that the European Union is ready to offer a significant support to the implementation of this agreement. And I think there are also a number of states willing to support in financial terms the implementation of the deal. And I think that the support to the deal among the international community is very solid. So, as you know, I am an optimist by nature. I hope that the deal will be implemented. I know that it's very challenging, it's very tough, not only for financial reasons, but also from the point of view of organization. It requires really a very hard work, a big dedication. But I'm an optimist because I think that the implementation of this deal would make a big change, good change for Armenia. And I think that Armenia in the long term would profit a lot from this investment, which is hard because Armenia is in need of financial resources. There are much more pressing needs, but still believe that from the strategic point of view, the future of the country, the implementation of the deal would be a very wise and very beneficial decision.
Շնորհակալ եմ, խնդրում եմ միկրոֆոնը էսկոմ փոխանցեք, Անա ջան, էսկոմ։ Ներկայացեք եւ ուղղեք ձեր հարցը։
Սոնադավթյան, իրավունք թերթ, պարոն դեսպան, իմ հարցը վերաբերում է Արցախյան խնդրին։ Ասացիք, որ Եվրամիությունը անում է ամեն ինչ նպաստելու խաղաղությանը, բայց վերջին Սանկտ Պետերբուրգյան հանդիպումից հետո մենք լսեցինք Ադրբեջանի նախագահի հայտարարությունը այն մասին, որ Ադրբեջանը դեմ է հետաքննական մեխանիզմների ներդրմանը, մի քայլ, որը կարող էր օգնել հենց այդ խաղաղության ամրապնդմանը։ Այսքանից հետո ինչ խաղաղություն մենք կարող ենք ակնկալել։ Ինձ հետաքրքիր է ձեր արձագանքը։ Շնորհակալ եմ։
Շնորհակալություն։
As I said, I think that there are very serious efforts being undertaken by, in particular, the co-chairs of the Minsk group at the highest level. And I think this is the time for diplomacy. This is not the time for megaphone diplomacy. This is not the time for public diplomacy. And therefore, I would be reluctant to comment any of public speeches that you refer to. let us diplomacy work.
Շնորհակալություն, խնդրեմ մեր միկրոֆոնը փոխանցեք։ Մերի։ Ներկայացեք եւ ուղղեք ձեր։
Շոկյան արապլյուս։ Պարոն դեսպան, նախ կուզեի, որպեսզի դուք ասեք ձեր պատկերացման ո՞րք են Հայաստանի ընդդիմադիր կուսակցությունները եւ ինչպես եք մեկնաբանում են փաստը, որ քաղաքացիական հասարակությունը չմիացավ ընտրական, այսպես ասած, օրենսգրքի կոնսենսուսին եւ քաղաքացիական հասարակության չմիանալն ինչ ազդեցություն կարող է ունենալ 2017-ի ընտրությունների լեգիտիմության վրա։
Շնորհակալություն, խնդրեմ պարոն դեսպան։
I don't want to comment on something which is clearly an internal matter of Armenia. Your political life is something that I have no view about. What I have a very strong view is how we, the European Union, can work with Armenia and how we, the European Union, can help Armenia to implement reforms to modernize itself. And therefore, when I refer to the agreement between the government and the opposition, the reason for my appreciation was this broader perspective. I do not calculate how it plays, for the opposition or against the opposition, for the government or against the government, for the civil society or against the civil society. The civil society decided not to join the agreement. They decided to stay aside. They have a sovereign right. They explained why they are doing this. But at the same time, I think most of them recognize that this agreement is a step forward. This agreement is something positive. And, this is part of a normal discussion in a democratic country. Some saying yes, some saying no. But what I wanted to say that from our perspective, the European Union, which is called upon to support the reform process in Armenia, this agreement was a very positive development. That's all I can say.
Շնորհակալություն, մենք եւս մեկ հարցում ենք, խնդրեմ, ներկայացեք։
Հովանեսյան, Երևան Today։ Պարոն դեսպան, իմ հարցս վերաբերում է ֆինանսավորմանը Եվրամիության Հայաստանին ուղղված, այ կարծիք կա, որ կարող է կրճատվել ֆինանսավորումը, արդյոք դա այդպես է, եւ ինչ արդյունք եք տեսնում կոռուպցիայի դեմ պայքարում Հայաստանի իշխանություններին։ Շնորհակալություն։
I said on another occasion that this year is a record year because the European Union this year is spending something like 90 million euros. That's almost double what we used to spend in previous years. But this year is exceptional for, say, technical reasons. The future of our development assistance is now being discussed. We have to prepare a good single support framework which will define our avenues for assistance till 2020. This is a very complex process. This process involves the institutions of the European Union, but also member states, and also the institutions of Armenia. We are now starting a very serious dialogue with your government. We are starting serious dialogue with other stakeholders. And I hope that by the end of the day, we will have a very good program for next year. We have to define what are the priorities. And of course, as you know, the new neighborhood policy requires us to pay increased attention to the needs of the country, of our partners. So we need a good input from Armenian stakeholders, from your ministers, from other institutions, because we want this assistance to be more productive than before. If you ask me, I would say on a personal basis, I would see the possibilities for expanding even our development assistance to Armenia. But this process depends to a large extent how efficient is our assistance so far and how quick is the progress that Armenia is making towards the European standards, the European values. It is not a secret that some of our budget support, or most of our budget support, is conditional on fulfilling very concrete criteria. You referred to corruption, and you heard my statement and widely quoted my statement about the assistance of the European Union in the fight against corruption. I am aware that the review of the 2015 anti-corruption goals as set up jointly by Armenia and the European Union would not be so positive, in the sense that most of the money that we were prepared to transfer to the Armenian government would not qualify for disbursement. But we have noticed very positive and good signs in the activities of the government quite recently. I participated in the Anti-Corruption Council chaired by the Prime Minister. I can tell you very openly, this was the best discussion on how to fight corruption that I have witnessed in many years, not only in Armenia, but also in some other transitional countries. We are aware of very concrete decisions taken by the Prime Minister to speed up the implementation of some of the measures which are aimed at fighting corruption. And these are very encouraging signs, which would prompt me, as the EU ambassador, to be patient with financial decisions referring to how much money we could disburse to Armenia for the previous goals. I would say, in the light of what we hear from the leaders of Armenia, let's wait. Let's be more positive. Let's be more optimistic. So, your question concerning the size of our development assistance, I give you one example, that if these measures that the Prime Minister, the government is now thinking about and implementing bring a visible result, of course, we will be obliged to disburse more. That's the obvious link with our budget support programs. That's how the European Union funds work. But there's also other possibilities, I would say untapped possibilities for development cooperation.
Շնորհակալություն, պարոն դեսպան։ Պարոն դեսպան, մեկ հարց իմ կողմից նվիրված Հայաստանի Եվրամիության հարաբերությունների եւ շրջանակային համաձայնագիրի շուրջ բանակցությունների վերաբերյալ, մինչև այդ բանակցությունները կարծեմ կամ դրանից հետո տեղի ունեցավ վարչապետի մոտ նաեւ հանդիպում Եվրամիության երկրների դեսպանների, դուք եք նաեւ այնտեղ որպես Եվրամիության ուրեմն դեսպան Հայաստանում, ինչպես նաեւ հունիսի 21-ին 22-ին տեղի ունեցավ 4-րդ փուլը այսպես շրջանակային համաձայնագրի շուրջ բանակցությունների Հայաստան Եվրամիություն։ Ինչ կարող ենք ասել այս 4 փուլանի բանակցություններից հետո։ Մենք ուր ենք հասել, թեպետ ուրեմն բանակցությունները կարելի ասել իհարկե իրենք ընթանում են փակ ֆորմատով, բայց այն ինչ կարող ենք ասել հասարակությանը լրատվամիջոցների միջոցով, ուր ենք հասել եւ արդյոք խոչընդոտներ կան այդ ուղղությամբ։
Thank you. You referred to our meeting with the Prime Minister last week, and indeed it was in a way a regular meeting between the Prime Minister and members of the government and the ambassadors of the European Union. But this meeting was really very encouraging in the sense that we had a very friendly atmosphere, very direct discussions, very constructive discussions. I thank the Prime Minister and other members of government who were present at the meeting for their very constructive attitude. We discussed mainly business environment, the possibilities for the involvement of more investors from Europe. We discussed various aspects of the cooperation between Armenia and the European Union and its member states. And this was indeed, I can tell you, you know how open and frank I am, an excellent meeting. It was really an excellent meeting. We all, ambassadors of the European Union, left the meeting with new inspiration. Concerning the negotiations, I think that the last round was really very impressive in terms of dynamics. I was there in Brussels, observed it from my seat as the EU ambassador, and I can tell you, in terms of the progress made, it was the best round of all the rounds conducted so far, which also, from my perspective, sends very optimistic signals for the relations between the European Union and Armenia.
Շնորհակալ եմ։ Խնդրեմ, մեկ վարքյան փոխանցենք այնտեղ, հետո դուք։ Արփին է խնդրում եմ։ Փոխանցեք մեր։ Հետո դուք։
Պարոն դեսպան, դուք քիչ առաջ խոսեցիք այն մասին, որ դուք շատ բաց եւ շիտակ եք։ Դուք հավանաբար տեղյակ եք Հայաստանում ինչ չափերի է հասնում արտագաղթը, այսինքն ամեն տարի անշեղորեն աճում են, հավանաբար տեղյակ եք, ես չգիտեմ։ Ես ուզում եմ իմանալ, ձեզ ծանոթ է հետևել արտահայտությունը, միաժամանակ պարզ է, որ դուք Եվրամիությունը գրեթե ամեն տարի Հայաստանում, այսպես ասած, մեծ գումարներ են ներդնում կառավարման եւ այլ բարեփոխումների համար։ Ձեզ հայտնի է ընդհանրապես կամոն տվող բազար արտահայտությունը։ Շնորհակալություն։
I know the expression, although I may have a different assessment of the use of this money. It is true that any development aid is not the main leverage of changing the situation in any given country. And I know it from very vast experience in Africa, but also in the Balkans. There are different, very serious research studies showing the effectiveness of development assistance. But in all cases, there is a big impact of development assistance. It may vary from a country to a country. It all depends on the local governance. With good governance, with the good rule of law, development assistance brings more results. But generally, if you ask me, I think that the assistance provided by the European Union has brought about very visible, very tangible results also for the benefit of ordinary citizens of Armenia. Just one example, our NPART program, Assistance to Agriculture. I went myself to one of the provinces to see how the farmers are sowing the first seeds of buckwheat. And they were telling me that it is the first time after 25 years that they were plowing this plot of land. So this NPART program allowed to make productive an arable land which was for 25 years abandoned. That's a real progress. There are other examples of where development assistance by the European Union or other international donors brings also very concrete benefits for ordinary citizens. But of course the magnitude of the problems faced by Armenia and other developing countries is much bigger than this development assistance can bring. That's obvious. I mean, even if terms of the size, we are number one donor, but we provide annually roughly 50 million euros. Can 50 million euros change the situation of this country? No. What it can help is to support some reform process, solve some problems that are not financed sufficiently by private or other funds, and so on and so forth. But I believe that Armenians appreciate this assistance, that Armenians would be happy to enjoy the continuation of this assistance. What is our common responsibility is to discuss how to make it more effective. And it's also your role of journalists. You should be telling me where to put this money and where not to put this money, because you know better your country than me. So we need your input. And as I said 15 minutes ago, this period of time is very important because we are now discussing where to divert our cooperation assistance in the next period, till 2020. And we need your active input. So if you have any ideas, let's meet until it's not too late. Because when we adopt decisions, when we start rolling out the process, then it's too late.
Շնորհակալություն, պարոն դեսպան, հանդիպումների համար մեդիա կենտրոնը պատրաստ է տրամադրել իր հարթակը, եւ վերջին հարցը ես խնդրում եմ հարգելի գործընկերներ, մինչեւ դրանից հետ
պարոն դեսպան, իմ հարցը վերաբերում էր կոռուպցիային։ Մի քանի ամիս առաջ մամուլը գրեց, որ մեր իրավապահները 3 քաղաքացու են ձերբակալել Եվրամիության դրամաշնորհները յուրացնելու համար։ Ուզում եմ ուղղակի իմանալ, անցել է մի քանի ամիս, դուք տեղյակ եք մեր իրավապահները ինչ ինտենսիվությամբ են այդ գործը բացահայտում։ Ձեզ բավարարում է մեր իրավապահների կատարած աշխատանքը, որպես ինչպես իմ գործընկերն ասաց, այսուհետ փողերը քամուն տվողները ավելի քիչ լինեն եւ լավ մտածեն, թե ում գումարներն են յուրացնում։ Շնորհակալություն։
Շնորհակալություն։
Thank you for this question. I want to use this occasion to express my gratitude to your law enforcement representatives for very serious and very active attitude to the case of corruption that we brought up as the European Union. Because, as you all know, these cases of corruption referring to EU grants were found out and investigated by our internal control procedures. But I wanted to tell you all that I'm really, really grateful and impressed by the activities of the investigators. I myself have had several meetings with the chief investigator of Armenia, the chairman of the investigation committee, with the investigators dealing with the cases. I think that the investigation has made a big progress on these cases. The European Union has appointed a lawyer in Yerevan representing the interests of the European Union. And I hope that these cases will be finalized in not too distant future and will be brought to courts. On our part, there is a full cooperation with the Armenian side. What I can say is the Armenian side is acting with full professionalism, because I think, as you said, this is important for both of us, for Armenia and for the European Union, that whatever funds are coming here to Armenia, they are well spent. It is our mutual interest. So I'm grateful. It's a very professional work by your investigation committee.
Շնորհակալություն պարոն դեսպան, շնորհակալ եմ հարգելի գործընկերներ այստեղ գտնվելու համար։ Ես տեղեկացնեմ, որ մեդիա կենտրոնում տեղի ունեցավ Հայաստանում Եվրամիության դեսպան Պյոտր Սվիտալսկիի մամուլի ասուլիսը։ Եթե պարոն դեսպանը ցանկանում է այսպես որպես ամփոփիչ խոսք ինչ-որ մի բան ասել, հավելել, որը չի ասվել, չի նշվել, խնդրեմ պարոն դեսպան, եթե ունեք հավելելու խոսք, եթե չէ, մենք ամփոփենք ասուլիսը։
I just wanted to thank you for coming, thank you for your interest. Don't look for any hidden messages. I am a very transparent person, so don't speculate. If you have any question on the meaning of my words, you ask directly.
Շնորհակալ եմ պարոն դեսպան, մեդիա կենտրոնում Պյոտր Սվիտալսկին էր։ Շնորհակալ եմ ձեզ, հաջողություն։
Thank you so much.